Yeah, it is.
Hey, okay, good morning from Davos, and you're all here, but we have people joining us online. This is the augmented manufacturing experience. We are, I think, one of the first sessions this year, so it's a very exciting start, different time of year, but let's do it. This panel is called, as I mentioned, the Augmented Manufacturing Experience. It's part of the Augmented Workforce Initiative in partnership with the University of Cambridge, and an alternate title for this panel might be something like, the robots are your friends, not the enemy. There's a perception out there that automation is killing jobs and it's wiping out the workforce, but these people are here to say that's not true, that actually this is a partnership and that workers are a big part of it and they need to actually be relied on and sort of empowered through automation. So that's how we're going to talk about it. How does the perception change? Why does it need to change? Why has it come to become as it is? And so before we get to all that, I'd like you all to introduce yourselves to our audience.
Okay, I'm Barbara Fry. I'm Swiss-born, as you might hear in my dialect. And I'm working for Schneider Electric, and I'm responsible for the industrial automation business.
Thanks, Barbara. I'm Andreas König, CEO of ProGraph. So we believe in the humans, and with the human in the center of what we do. So we do wearable scanning devices. They are so small that I can take it with me. And we also do a solution, software and hardware, to really empower the human on the shop floor and the logistics.
Awesome. I'm Nathan Linder. I'm co-founder and chairman of Formlabs, where we build 3D printers. So we know a little bit about machines that humans use. And I'm co-founder CEO of Tulip, which makes a frontline operation system that allows the digitization, flexible digitization, bottom-up of operational environments, shop floors, machine shop, and so on.
So Nathan, you wrote a book about this, the augmented lean. Why don't you start there? What does that mean? What does this all mean to you? Yeah. Oh, and we have our final panelist.
Perfect.
I'm really embarrassed. I read 8:15.
It's human, and the automation didn't work. Right?
Well, we're going to put you right on the spot. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
Sharon Burrow, General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation. And I haven't had enough coffees, my only excuse.
Representing the worker on this panel. A lot of people here are talking a lot about how this helps and coming from the business perspective. So we'd love to hear your perspective as well. We were just asking Nathan to tell us about augmented lean.
So augmented lean is a very simple, straightforward idea. We are probably coming on decade 9 before of what traditionally, the classic lean that comes from the machines that changed the world, Toyota production system. We moved to digital lean, where we had back-end systems and front-end system, helping people move paper to glass. But humans have been forgotten in operational environments. They have not become knowledge workers in the simplest form. So their ability to change how people work or how companies work is limited. And augmented lean focuses on the humans in these environments and giving them the tools to change the work and sustain it in a digital fashion.
Well, let's talk about the humans real quick. Let's talk about this big picture concept that we want to talk about today. Why is it a myth that the robots are coming to replace the machines? Sharon, let's go with you. Why?
Well, fully automated workplaces, frankly, are still the stuff of science fiction and probably should remain there. Because I agree totally. If you've invested in people and they know what the business is, they understand quality, they understand what you're producing, then augmentation can assist, no question, can assist the worker, can assist the productivity. But if it's not in sync with the workers themselves, if you're not blending the knowledge and the use of the technology, then frankly, you will be poorer for it as a business. You said it, actually. We have to work out how to involve the workers on the shop floor to help you actually both introduce the technology at optimum performance, but also monitor its capacity to work. I have a son who actually is involved in processing, and he gets very upset when indeed the employers on the job, the managers say, no, you can't stop the machine. It'll cost us. And he says, it'll cost you more if you don't listen to us, because that project produced is actually below standard. Stop it now, fix it. So there's a room for a blended approach that will work much better for everybody and gain the trust of the workers, because they don't feel like they're sidelined, they feel like they're at the centre of it. But workers' voice is critical on the shop floor, from ourselves, from others, to get the agreement about how to do this properly.
Barbara, you operate more than 300 sites. Tell us about how you're working toward blending that engagement between worker and machine and automation. How's it going?
So at Schneider Electric, we are in energy management and automation, and we have a broad portfolio of products that we produce mainly by ourselves. So we have 80,000 people in our manufacturing, and improving efficiency and how we can do it better was always our culture, to involve people from the shop floor. So we had a process called short interval management, where we were asking IDs and collecting them, putting then the metrics together, how they are going to improve the performance, but it was all on paper until recently. And therefore it was not so inclusive, so some could not participate, you could not really see the progress overall. So we digitized now the whole thing, and in principle every shop floor employee now can put in his IDs, he can see where is my ID, has it been implemented, how does it impact the overall metrics. So you can see one-to-one, what is the performance of my production line, has it improved, has it not improved. And just to give you some numbers, we were having 35,000 IDs collected. Out of this, 45% have been implemented, and only 18%, of course, which we had to say, okay, this is not really feasible, it's not realistic that we can really do it with the right ROI. But I think it was quite powerful, because our employees feel completely involved, they can have a say, and they see the success by looking then almost on a daily basis sometimes on the metrics, which is greatly improving. So I think I can fully agree, having involved the people is powerful in this sense.
Andreas, tell us about this device you're wearing right here. That looks like something.
Yeah, it looks like being Spider-Man or being Superman. It sounds funny, but that's kind of what we try to achieve. As Nathan said, the human is probably one of the most underrated factor on the shop floor or in logistics. And we believe that everything is trying to be automated, but there's so much room that the human needs to play. But how do you connect him with a digital surrounding? And that's what we are changing. You are able to interact bidirectionally with the machines, with the data. The workflow is guided, and through this, the workforce is guided. Through this, the workforce and the workflow becomes much smarter and in real time. And that's something that has not been done before. We call it the human digital twin. So you get a representation of what the human is doing, and the human can then decide interactively how to optimize his working day. And that's, again, why I said we believe in the human as a central and very important factor in every industry.
So we have installed in 16 of our distribution centers ProGlove. And the funny thing is how people talk about it. So there is a lot of sharing, how we apply it. Some apply it better, some less. It's really the human factor plays a big role, how successful also such a device becomes. So
yeah, I agree.
Well, so let's just go right at it. A lot of the issue around, when people talk about automation, it comes up in the United States where I am, where people say, sure, offshoring is one reason for job losses, but another one is automation. What is like someone at home, maybe they're catching a Davos panel, they're like, at Davos, they're talking about how this helps the worker. Come on. They don't maybe believe it, but really, how is this supposed to protect employment? Maybe we should start with you, Sharon. How does this, are workers really supposed to be happy about this moment?
So there are job losses, let's not sugarcoat it, but also the story of technology to date, in terms of the way we use technology, for the unions has been a success story, because on three fronts. One, it's actually made the job often easier if it's good technology and it's applied with confidence. Secondly, it actually increases productivity. That allows us to upskill wages, where companies have a good practice of social dialogue and collective bargaining, so we get skilling and skilled wages because you have to upskill workers as well. Today's technology has the threat of job loss, but traditionally every time we've introduced a wave of technology, the numbers of jobs have gone up. So we talk about, for climate and for technology, a process called just transition, where you're engaged with the worker and indeed you map the skills you need, you map the jobs, you look at where you can protect and grow jobs, because often you can in fact grow jobs in other sectors of the building, of the enterprise, and therefore how do you actually skill those workers and transfer them? So taking responsibility for the workplace, engaging the workers, having a plan that they can see, that they're not just going to be thrown out the door, that's the key, because then the trust is there to make the change.
Barbara, I was watching you give a vigorous nod to trusted change and involving the worker. And tell me why were you nodding so thoroughly?
Because this is the experience that we have. So by involving the shop floor, and by the way, the same trend you could also see in the office. Also in the office you can automate processes. And this was highly motivating for the people, because instead of doing a repetitive, not satisfying waste time job, so to say, you get to a much more meaningful job, and that's highly motivating. And then you see new opportunities. You can work on new business opportunities instead of the old ones. So reducing this, we call it red time, the time that is not really necessary in the production process, to get rid of it is highly motivating. And then you are free to do other things. And I think this other thing is the motivating part.
Nathan, when you and I talked before, we talked about how this needs to be a bottoms-up transition, which I think is what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, and this is actually a very important point to mention the work we've done in the platform the past year or so, and the research with Cambridge University, and seeing that organizations that harness the people on the shop floor, exactly like you're telling, are actually gaining what I mentioned before, a more sustainable digital transformation, because they understand the basic, anomaly, in lean, that when lean preaches like that, when you find waste in the process, you have to change and move it to your customer. But if your legs are stuck in the concrete of like complex systems, and you're not able to like quickly take an idea and turn it into something that you can use fast, change, iterate, then you're not really practicing lean. And this is the weird thing that happened in the past 30 years of technology, that the system has been so complex. And if I'm building on your point, like the issue of, you put, and this is the US numbers, by the way, take $1 you put into manufacturing and get $2.68 in the economy. So the fact is not just that there's missing workers, there's a whole long chain of value that gets created once you start digitizing. And we're missing 800,000 people today in operations, and 3 million in the next 5 years, just in the US alone. And you go to MIT and you ask who wants to go to manufacturing, no one raises their hand. And you ask who wants to work in big data, machine learning, robotics, etc., the whole class raises their hands. So where's the issue? The issue is that potentially we're dealing with bad rep, or we just haven't brought the internet, as we all know it, to the operational area where we actually install it. But the message is we have it there, and we need to make it available. And that's where systems like what we're building at Tulip and others as well can help a lot.
Andreas, help us move to the world of the actual, from the philosophical to the actual. Tell us about some experiences where your companies helped bring about shop floor innovation to ultimately spreading it around with all sorts of workers.
Absolutely. Just some metrics. We can, with these devices, we can improve 30% efficiency. Even in very well-established companies, we save between 4 and 6 seconds per scan, because you can work hands-free. The problem, I think, is with technology for the humans. So that technology for humans really lags behind the technology that's installed in machines. So they are using tools typically that come from engineers, are made for engineers, but not for the humans. So therefore, they are super complex. It's very difficult to train people on the tools. And that's I think, something that needs to change. And if you go to the consumer world, whether it's Fitbit, Apple, and so on, these tools are super intuitive. And the next generation is growing up with this. They want to have the same tools. They want to have something that's super interactive, super easy to use, super easy to understand. And so far, that's something that's completely lost. And that's where, and maybe it's because our team is so young, we have average 28 in age.
So you're pulling it down.
Yeah, I'm actually increasing the average age, but that's another problem. But these people think differently. They think about how can we help the human. It needs to be ergonomic, it needs to be super lightweight, it needs to be safe, help with safety and security, it needs to be inspirational. We have workers at an automotive company, they took on this glove for the first time and they started dancing and they said, oh, now I feel like Superman. That's kind of the inspiration that I think should be coming from these tools, so that people, like you said, like to work in that environment again and not say, oh, I'm going to stay out of manufacturing, stay out of logistics, because that's not interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Barbara, you mentioned that the key is tracking metrics and digitizing not just the creation of these tools, but actually digitizing the workforce so that they have ideas about how to improve these tools, they can track it, the progress of those ideas. Tell us more about that.
So yeah, if you as a shop floor employee, you enter an ID, then you can really see over the time, has it been adopted, has it been rejected, why has it been rejected, and then when it has been adopted, you can always clearly see the connection to the metrics, and that's highly, it's a, hey, I've done something which is really improving the unit where I'm working with. And this is exactly what Sharon was mentioning. If you are part of the story, it's much easier to adapt to it. And for me, it's always a pleasure and energizing. You go to a site of Schneider Electric, you enter it, and then you have people which are showing you, hey, this is happening, this is happening, this is what we have improved. And specifically also during COVID time, where you just could not travel, we still had like almost a TV show into large sites where the employees were showing to us what they have improved. And I think that's quite powerful in that sense.
So, Sharon, are workers really dancing in reaction to all of this? And
I was smiling at the dancing. You know, you can't discount the fear factor. There's so much change in the world right now, and we are dealing with multiple crises. And if you don't deal with them in an integrated way, then, you know, manufacturing is not separate to the disruptions in supply chains. It's not separate to the technological growth that means you can onshore some production, but with less workers, what that means for developing countries who provided the supply chains. So it's, you know, let's hope people can get to the dancing point. But right now, we need to be open and transparent about what the change is, what it's for, because sometimes the tools are sexy, but actually they don't help all that much. And I've seen businesses have to admit that they've invested in a lot from a sales pitch, and then in the end said, well, you know what, we probably shouldn't have rushed into that. So I don't know how you get that right. I mean, that takes a particular management skill. But what I do know is exactly what Barbara said. If people are part of the solution, then you will get there faster and with much better feeling in the workforce. That means greater job satisfaction, greater productivity. We know the story. A lot of the lack of interest in many of these jobs comes from the fact that there is no sharing of what the actual work is. You know, people have to, it's the old school show and tell piece. People have to know what the job is to actually understand that, yeah, they might actually like to try that. So we've got to rethink the way we involve people at every step, including our schools and universities.
Natan, let's get to the practical. How are your industry peers failing to communicate this change appropriately?
I think the biggest thing is a shift from, you know, closed gardens to an ecosystem. We've seen this, if you plot the curve, you know, from more or less 1995 on, so you have the growth of the, you know, internet connected terminals, what have you, in open source, you see them more or less correlate one-to-one. Meaning the more sharing, the more people open up, the more people learn from each other, the more growth in technology. And then if you think about it from engineers' perspective, and I come from embedded software, but it's true for EEs or any other type of engineering, no one starts from scratch. And I ask, where is the open source for operations? Where is that courseware that you jump on, the Stack Overflow, all those tools that we use to learn? And so, what we've done at Tulip is basically partnered with folks like MIT, Carnegie Mellon, Michigan, people around the vocational school system in the United States to create curriculum for Industry 4.0. And we've done this also with the forum. And this is really a call to action to anyone who wants to teach and kind of help move this knowledge around and share. That's the main thing that I think is missing. And not a single company on the internet controls all the stack. You don't call XYZ company anymore and say, hey, please build me the stack of IT to run my company. The world is heterogeneous, and it will not skip over operation just because the old world is still there. So,
Andreas, what mistakes are your industry peers making?
I think I see a trend in general that whether it's on the executive level or within companies or even politicians, AI are buzzwords, automation are buzzwords. So everyone wants to talk about it and talks about it. And this in itself instills a lot of fear. And I think we need to be more balanced and also think about how you can really empower the workforce, because digitalization doesn't mean always introducing machines and always doing automation. It also means how to have humans and machines interact with each other. And I think that is not something we talk enough about. Not only on a peer level, but also within the companies, because it's quite in vogue to talk about the other stuff.
Okay, so excuse me, Barbara. We changed seats here. Barbara, tell me about what mistakes you think that your industry peers are making. I mean, kind of amplify, build on it. I mean, we know that we're talking too much about cost savings, but what are the mistakes that companies make when they roll out these technologies that set workers on edge, that actually keep progress from happening as fast as it should?
So we also have experiences. So whatever we applied on us, usually we can also then sell to others. So a lot what we have installed in our so-called smart factories, we also sell them to our customers. And usually what we see is the problem of exactly this transformation, that the human aspect, the change leadership is completely underestimated. So you introduce an HMI, a new one, or a new process, and nobody has been really involved in this process. So there is a lot of unknown, there is a lot of dissatisfaction because the tool is not doing what you would expect to do, and that's the big failure point. And if then the team is rejecting a solution, you almost are at the end. So this change process, introducing a new software, introducing a new tool, a new machine, needs at the same time really a cultural or change leadership to really make it happen. And this is where, from my point of view, the majority is failing. So usually when we go then in such a project with a customer, we have sometimes then a partner on board who is really skilled on doing these kind of things together with us.
Plus the values. If you're not talking in the boardroom about not just the change management, but what kind of values you're actually bringing into the workforce, when most companies these days will have a value set they talk about, but they don't often talk about how you manage that in a change process, how you manage those values in making sure that the coding of the AI that you use, or the use of digitalization, or indeed the questions of surveillance, privacy, data use are absolutely explained and agreed with the workforce and customers. So I think sometimes you have to step back and not just say, will the technology help my business? And if so, how do I implement it with the most effective, most seamless change? You have to also think, and what does it do to the set of values that we say we aspire to actually, to actually meet the test of. So I do think, and the more you talk to coders around AI, and the more questions people ask, the more people acknowledge that maybe we have to have the partnership between humanities, between science, and particularly in terms of environment, and between people and people's understanding of the technological impact. I was just thinking about your point, and if a group of young workers under 28 actually understand and are convinced that the technology is not just going to help their work and that they can use it, but it's going to reduce emissions and make the world a better place in terms of climate stability, I would think that would be extraordinarily motivating for that generation. Older generations as well, but particularly that generation.
So you've brought up a lot of topics that I hope our audience asks about in a few minutes. Unintended consequences, privacy, things we need to look out for. But first, we're going to introduce the governor of Indiana. His name's Eric Linder. He's right here.
Well, great to be with you all. And I'm just struck by this conversation, how we've literally been talking about this very topic for centuries. Personally, I was reminded of an interview my great-grandfather did with a very small local newspaper in the state of Indiana. He immigrated to America back in the 1880s as a blacksmith. And in 1948, he did an interview about the future of smithing. And he said, he had a great quote in this interview. He said, "The good Lord gaveth and replaced it with rubber." And talked about, what he would be dealing with, how he used to work, shoeing horses and horse and buggies, and now he's working on tractors. And so literally, whether it's a wheel or a hammer or whatever, as we modernize, we have to make sure that we're skilling up. This is something that's critically important to a state like Indiana. We're the #1 manufacturing state in America per capita. So this has literally been and meant life or death for the lifeblood of our state. And as I see it, government, be it local, state, or federal, has a key role, if not a central role, in making sure that we're all kind of oaring in the same direction. And just very quickly, I think one of the things that leaders like myself in government often skip over is making sure, and you've all hit on this, is making sure you're articulating your vision and where you want, in our case, the state to be, not this year, but in 10 years from now. So easy for me to say, I love boasting about being the #1 manufacturing state in America, but are we going to be the #1 advanced manufacturing state in America in 10 years? So articulating that vision and then aligning all of the stakeholders sitting on this stage right here, government entities, what we fund is what we prioritize, making sure that government and our schools, our world-class colleges and universities, and the businesses themselves are aligned in that vision and in that mission. Also, you have to make sure that there is real buy-in from all the stakeholders continuously, that people are sticking to the script, if you will, making sure that we're not just deploying resources, but how are they being used and to what end. So implementing that strategy or implementing that plan, then holding ourselves accountable, measuring, as was our, looking at the metrics, where are we actually measuring the results of policies and of programs, training programs, critically important to measure. And then I think equally so, sharing those results, the good, the bad, or the ugly, and seeing what's working and what's not, being willing to adapt, looking at the results, admit if something failed, that's fine. That didn't work, but we need to do more of what does. And so sharing those results, and I think that is also sometimes just skipped over, that the results matter. It's not just rhetoric. That rhetoric, empty, leads to cynicism, leads to fear, leads to wondering, but those positive testimonies that you've heard multiple times already this morning, that's inspiring. And that will get more people to gravitate to what is growing and working. And then just very quickly and lastly, we can't also skip over the role of government in making sure that we have a vibrant economic ecosystem of which businesses can determine their own destinies in partnership with the other stakeholders. Making sure that we are an attractive place and a pro-growth place, making sure that we're investing in community development. Oftentimes people decide where they're going to live before they decide where they're going to work. And so good, vibrant communities are critically important. Communities that are connected. And so that infrastructure, a state like Indiana, in the heartland, critically important that we don't just rhetorically call ourselves the crossroads of America, but that we are, and that we can connect with people and markets all over the world. So that's a quick kind of top 10 checklist that I think government officials have to go through, but the alignment of the business community, of the government, and then our academia, critically important to the success of all these businesses.
Governor, quick question. By the way, I got your name wrong before. It's Governor Holcomb. There's Mr. Linder's on the panel here, not Governor Linder. Okay, you've got So tell me about the retail politics moment of explaining to a voter who's worried about automation. They've heard it, like offshoring automation, it's killing jobs. Why would you be in favor of that in Indiana when it's going to take jobs elsewhere, et cetera?
Well, you've heard this. I mean, it's taking the time, as you suggest, to explain that when Purdue University, boiler up, hammer down, we're proud of Purdue, partners with NDOT, our Department of Transportation, and a German, in this case, startup company, to actually build magnetic concrete so that the future of fleets can literally charge the trucks, the electrical trucks, on the highways as they drive. This can be scary to some people. This can be that science fiction that's literally become science faction in this case. And it always leads to, at least in our case, we have 5 auto OEMs. We are hiring more people because of the productivity increases. And so you've got to take time to talk about the culture of the company and the mission and your values, and that's what eases people's concerns and instead creates excitement about we want to be part of determining our destiny.
Yeah, just to recap, what a lot of people are saying is take time to actually think about what this looks like for the worker, how this benefits them. And I know a lot of management, they spend a lot of time talking about how there are going to be gains in efficiency, profit, and those sorts of things, but it's actually bringing it to the boardroom. All right, now we're going to open it up to the audience for questions. Does anybody have any questions? I'm sure we have questions. I'll give it a moment. Yes. Hold on, wait for the microphone. Yep, sorry, I should have said that. My apologies.
Barbara, you were talking about how to lead the change management. One big part is how to upskill the workers, right? How to make sure that you get the current workforce to a state where they can understand that complex system of an automated manufacturing line. How do you do that?
Upskilling is a big part of what we are doing, and that's exactly also a bit of the motivation. Not a bit, it's a big part of the motivation. So we have dedicated budgets to do this, and it's not only upskilling, but also having then different profiles when you hire new. So today in global supply chain, we have a relatively strong team on artificial intelligence, which we didn't have 5 years ago. And this is because the most of the data in the company we generate in our global supply chain. And out of this data, we can really read a lot, sometimes not. So we are still sometimes in trial error phase, but that also helps us to make better decisions in certain areas, specifically regarding forecasting. So it's not only upskilling, but it's also bringing new profiles on board. And again, it has created jobs which were not there before. So it's really a part where we also put a lot of emphasis. And what I'll try to do then is also to say, hey, if you have today a certain level of education, maybe going into data analytics is a good thing. So there are different steps how you can get into data analytics. And we have specific programs ongoing also on this one. So quite important.
I totally agree with that, but I want to go back to the governor's story, because you can't sit in a company here in isolation. If you're actually going to create smart concrete, repave the roads, then think about the chain of jobs in that. You first of all have the technology itself and the engineers. I was laughing earlier about your reference to humans versus engineers, but you know, you kind of, you actually, you take that product, you have to produce it, manufacturing, you have to lay it, but then you've got to take up all the other residual stuff that's there. There's jobs in actually making sure it works, and there's maintenance. People often forget, and often companies actually divorce themselves from maintenance. They outsource it. Fine, but you have a relationship with the group that actually, so my point is, if you do the jobs map, if you look at the dividends that are created in terms of the jobs map and you share that with people and then you help people with skilling and redeploying, then you don't get the fear. Often that redeploying's within the company and that's best because people trust that most. But if the guarantee of a good job that's interesting, that they understand what it's doing, most people are actually going to be they're going to feel secure, even if there's those odd moments of trepidation.
Yeah.
Sir, I saw this hand right here first. Yep, you, but let's wait for the microphone.
Hello, question for the panel. I'm part of the Global Shapers, the youth network of the World Economic Forum. In a previous life, previous career, I know I look very young, and again, I was consulting for industrial automation. And something that really struck me as we are all talking in the consumer market in the past few months about the metaverse and so forth, which most of the times is about mixed reality, augmented reality, and virtual reality. There are a lot of sophisticated applications out there that are related to security of workers, for example, on the lines of production and assembly and so forth. But I've never seen like really scaling those technologies up. I've never seen like deep integration between the possibility of activating a machine and having like to have checklists in augmented reality when you actually see the safety rules and you don't have to remember like a huge manual or whatever. What is your point of view in this sense of the integration of this kind of technology, but mostly about the adoption at scale?
Yeah. Can I take this one?
Yes, please.
Look, and this is tied to what you said before. It's like use cases, not buzzwords. So like you just listed the whole AI, VR, AR, all these kind of things. They make wonderful demos, but really what it is a content problem and a software problem. Like there's simply not enough hours or enough people who can create enough software to, mastermind all this complexity. And the alternative to that over the several decades has been a simple thing. We call it system integration. So we would put up complex RFPs and then you get something, and then until you get it implemented, it's like matters less. And the cycle can only accelerate if you put the technologies as the building block in a composable fashion at the hands of people who have most context for the job that they're trying to automate. And this also builds into to your question, and I'll give you you see how the two ties, because like the tricks are actually very simple. So we've seen partners and customers doing like an online learning gate, meaning they wait until there's a certain level of people who have accelerated their learning curve to a point that they have enough courses in the system, and only then they let them to play with the toys, whatever the toys are. It could be this VR system, that VR system, and what ended up happening. And this is the tie to what the governor mentioned on what we're seeing in the heartland. And the anecdote is you see people who are the older folks in the workforce. They may have vocational education, so never went to college, but they know every screw in the shop floor, every single one, and it's all in their head. And then they put an engineer in their 20s next to them, and they work together. And suddenly the knowledge gets transferred, but it doesn't end up in a spreadsheet. It ends up in some system and the integrations. That is sustainable. That is something you can then teach another engineer. And when people create those digital solutions themselves, they care about them, and they manicure them, and then they want to talk about them, and then they want to share them, and then progress happens.
So typically, maybe one more comment. I think very often the problem is that you need to introduce tools that are very intrusive, and the line between augmenting someone and tracking someone is very close.
Oh, yeah.
And therefore, if you give him tools that he's using anyhow every day, the likelihood that he's going to use it for other things like interacting with machines, getting information forth and back is much, much higher because he feels empowered rather than being tracked. And by the way, thanks for the comment on engineers versus humans. Yeah. I obviously meant humans on the shop floor, so plain English.
I thought it was great.
Call that a Freudian slip. Yes, sir.
So I just want to follow up on the thing we talked a little bit about fear and what people actually perceive as part of all the changes going on. I work in 3D printing, and in 3D printing, it's a similarly buzzwordy kind of environment. And a lot of times what helps is a clear story, a clear thing that you can point to, something that is easily accessible. And I would love to kind of open it up to the panel and ask, what is a good story that you want to point to as a win, as something that is happening today? We have Tulip, we have ProGlove. You guys are working actually in the field. If you would have to convince someone not to be worried about losing a job or thinking about the future, is there something that you can like point out today as a very concrete example, not something 10 years from now or something that is pointing to somewhere close?
We're running out of time, so I just want to have one great example. Someone boldly take it.
I'll take it. So think about, consider a company in the dental space. They make, someone goes to the dentist, they scan their mouth, goes to a lab. They have all sorts of cases that can come out of this. There's literally billions of permutation. Think about the number of teeth, the number of procedures they can handle, and they need to turn a case like Amazon in 24 hours. If you start writing the software today to support something like that, you will never be done. The only way you can do it is like with systems that build on the human knowledge and the skill and connect the various pieces of information along the way. And the result of that very concretely to convince is that you take the training period from six months to less than 6 weeks. And why? Because you don't have a person watching a person. And you can agilely change that software and the workflow based on what people actually do. So that is a concrete example I can give. You probably have another one.
If we have time.
We're running out of time, but what I want to end on is like Moses came down from the mountaintop with 10 commandments, like come out with one commandment right now for your peers in the industry. Like, this is what you need to be doing to be getting this right. And by the way, if it's something they're not doing right now, that's all the better. So we'll start with you.
I take it from the positive side.
Yeah.
So I think you really need to embrace it. And I think this is what our global supply chain in Schneider Electric has really done. So we're on it since 20 years, but in the last 3 to 5 years, we really have embraced it. And we were also eating our own food of solutions that we are applying to our customers, and that helped a lot. And embracing means really having everyone involved from shop floor up to management.
So I strongly believe that if you make the employees productive and those are happy, that the revenue and profit is coming by itself. And therefore, I'm saying focus on the humans, focus on the people, even the people on the shop floor, they are super, super important, and it will help the company.
My take, I'll just repeat what I said in the beginning. If you stick to old school lean and you don't augment your lean processes, this is true both for what you do with your machines and automation, also how you teach the humans to use them, then you're going to stay behind. So work on augmenting your lean procedures.
You can't run your businesses on technology alone. So make sure that people are respected, they're included, they understand your ambition and that they can contribute to it, so they're proud of their work, and at all times walk the values that you profess to actually adhere to.
So here's what I heard. I heard embrace the change, eat your own dog food, so to say. And then I heard, and I like this, make the employees happy, focus on them, bring them into the process. That's something we heard a lot today. It's like get data from them, solicit their advice, pair up the shop floor veteran with the engineer, who is a human, by the way. We've decided.
Humaneer.
Yeah, a humaneer.
Humaneer, it's a human that engineers. Those exist too.
And then embrace augmented lean. And then I think Sharon, it's back to just make sure you're including the workers. Bring them in and make sure that they're part of this process for change, because it's going to happen, and it's going to be ugly if we don't do it the right way. And so thank you all very much for your time today. This is a great conversation. Thanks for the questions. Thank you. Okay, that's it. Great, thank you.
Right on.
Wonderful.